any good thing to make us merry.
The Shakespeare Festival is going into its 19th year, and up until now it has been primarily, although not exclusively, a summer festival focused on a large-scale outdoor Shakespeare in Forest Park. But shortly after its first year, it added an education tour, and that has grown over the last 19 years, so it visits dozens of schools all over the region and introduces Shakespeare to a lot of young people in Missouri and Illinois. And then about 6 years ago, something started called Shakespeare in the Streets, and that is a really innovative community engagement program where artists will go into a neighborhood, spend a long time talking with the residents, learning about where they live and how they live, and using that research and their contributions to create an adaptation of a Shakespeare play that tells a story of that place.
No one remembers my name. When I was sold at the courthouse steps in downtown St. Louis, I told my wife, well, Fanny, we will part forever on this earth. I hope you will find me in heaven. I am a ghost of Maplewood.
But recently, the festival has committed to producing and developing new work. And that has culminated in a 4-week festival of new plays at the Grandel called In the Works, which is being headlined by a play called Into the Breeches, a story about what happened during World War II when a lot of the men were away fighting the war. How did theaters continue?
I play a... Oh, I'd be laughed off the stage. You? Well, I suppose not that. Never that.
And also featuring a family performance called A Most Outrageous Fit of Madness and a staged reading called 1,000 Natural Shocks. And each one of those plays has a really strong Shakespearean connection.
That's Shakespeare too! That's from
Merry Wives of Windsor!
This first slate of programs was very specifically chosen with strong Shakespearean connections. And that makes a lot of sense for a new program as a step in a new direction. But pretty quickly, someone would run out of really excellent plays that had really strong Shakespearean connections, especially if you're trying to make it be new work. So I'm sure that as we continue to think about the kind of shows we want to produce, we'll probably feel less tied to their having to have a really strong Shakespeare connection.
Have you ever acted before, Mrs. Snow?
Winifred, please, and yes, back at Rosati Kane.
And I'll bet you were spectacular.
Well, I did turn a head or two. The Post-Dispatch called me rounding out the cast.
We're hoping that there are some people who may not be excited about the idea of coming to see a Shakespeare play, but who might be more excited to come and see something that feels newer, fresher, more contemporary, more accessible, where people are talking in language that's more familiar when they're in a world that feels closer to the one that they know. Because you need that sort of connection to get hooked by something. And so obviously our hope is that we can hook people, not just to sort of have them, but because we think that there's so much that the experience can offer in terms of community, in terms of connection, in terms of shifting our perspectives and widening our points of view on things. So we want to be able to say, you may not think Shakespeare's for you, but what about this?
I can assure all of you ladies that I tried to enlist at various times at various recruitment stations. First, they told me that I was too short, so I wore shoes with lifts. Next, they told me that my eyes were too poor, so I cheated on the exam. Finally, they told me that I was a swish, a suspicion which led to an extremely humiliating interrogation. I found I did not have the strength to repeat.
The theater is a living thing, and the festival has to find some ways to be really responsive to these somewhat tumultuous times. And while Shakespeare is sort of a man for all seasons, as they say, there is still a need for artists to be responding in real time to what's going on in the world around them. And so when we're looking at plays, we're looking at plays that speak to our current moment, whatever that happens to be. People have been enormously positive about this venture. Audiences love the show, the actors love the material. There's every indication that this is the right direction for us to be going in, and the direction that will be fruitful for the foreseeable future.